I'd like to look in the mirror without hiding my eyes. I'd like to see what you see, why you think I'm qualified to speak for you, oh God, Most High, who hides a baby in the reeds of a river until he's grown, gives him a stage and the strength to deliver his people home. 'Cause I'm tongue-tied, weak in the knees, must be something you only see if there's anything.
Welcome to Wednesday Night's Bible Study. My name is Philip Brand. This is Grayson Snyder.
That's correct.
Yeah. Siri calls him Cinder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he thinks it's because I have his name spelled wrong in my phone.
I do think that, yes.
Yeah. Could be. How do you spell it?
Well, that takes part of the joy out of it. But phonetically, SNYDER.
But how do you really spell it?
That's how I spell it.
Okay, great.
Well, I guess it's not how I just spell it. It's how my ancestors have always spelled it.
Has spelled it. Cinder. Snyder. Snyder. I hear the N. Snyder.
Yeah. It's like Snape. Snyder.
Yeah, Sniper. Now, today I'm wearing my Liberty shirt.
Yeah, I'm wearing my Farmington shirt.
Well, that has nothing to do with... I intentionally did this because Liberty is in the big dance.
The big dance, yeah.
The big dance.
They're dancing.
They don't even have to play in.
There you go.
Yeah, they're
Did
already
they win their
in.
conference? Is that how they got in?
Yeah. So they're playing... They're not playing a number one seed.
Mm-mm.
They're playing Oregon. Is it Oregon they're playing? I think they're playing Oregon.
Mm.
You don't know.
I have no idea.
Because you haven't looked at it.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I think they're playing Oregon. And I have them winning their first game.
Oh, I thought you were going to be a diehard loyal fan, have them going all the way.
No, I think I haven't looked at the second game, but I don't think that they're going to go past the second game.
Yeah, you're a realist.
Yeah, I'm trying to win. It's a group of people, and you get so many points for the wins.
I understand.
Yeah, so that makes me a realist. It's like North Carolina; they're not going to get past the second game.
Yeah, Duke could go all the way.
Maybe
they could.
Well, it depends if Flag is back.
Yeah, I think he's got a sprain, so might be a couple weeks.
Well, at least the first two games aren't that hard, but people have been knocked off here recently by 16th seed. Anyway, that has nothing to do with Exodus chapter 6, ladies and gentlemen. So turn your Bibles to Exodus chapter 6. I am going to right up front give you an outline of Exodus chapter 6.
Okay.
It's 5 parts of the outline. First, God declares his commitment to his people. That's in verses 1 through 8.
Okay.
The response of his people in verse 9. The third point in the outline is Moses doubts his ability to do what God is commanding him to do. That's in verses 10 through 13. Then you have a genealogy, which is verses 14 through 25. And then you have Moses' doubts in verses 26 through 30. So last week we ended on Moses being bewildered that things did not go as well as they should have with Pharaoh, and that things did not go well with his people, and that the foremen actually were pretty in his face and said, may God judge you for what has happened. Right, is what happened. In fact, if you look at chapter 5, verse 21, and they said to them, and this is the foreman, the Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. So he says, we want God to judge you because of this. And then verse 22, then Moses turned to the Lord and said, O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? This is not going well. This is not the way I thought it would go. I know it would be tough, but I didn't think it would get worse.
Yeah.
And he says, for since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all. So at all. So it's not going well for Omo. Not going well. So he prays this prayer, and then the Lord answers him in chapter 6, verse 1.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's where God declares his commitment to his people again. Right? So, but the Lord said to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of his hand, of this land. Now, a couple of things about that verse. First of all, we said last week that this is not quite the response that you would want from God when you are bewildered about what's going on and that it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
You want him to say, I'm going to turn that around. And it's going to be done. That's not what he says here. What he does is he reminds Moses of the promise that he made to Moses at the burning bush.
Yeah.
He says, I'm going to deliver.
Yeah.
Just hold on to the promise. And the application there, which is a repeat from last Bible study, is sometimes all you have is the promise that God has made to you. And things do get worse, and it doesn't seem like that promise is going to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
But God is saying here, when times are dark, hold on to my promises.
Yeah.
I'm still the same God, and there is a reason for all this. Just hold on. The promise will be fulfilled.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple other things about that particular verse. He does seem to say there will be no longer a delay. Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. That now's the time that you're going to see
Yep.
what I'm going to do. For with a strong hand he will send them. That particular word, strong hand, of course, has to do with power. And we've talked about that in our Bible study, how hand is the same as power. So Pharaoh has a hand of power, and God has a hand of power. The difference is Pharaoh's hand of power is given to him by God. God's hand of power is given to him by no one. Yeah, so we can keep that in mind in the story. He will send them out, and with the strong hand, that's with power, he will drive them out of his land. That particular phrase means expel them from the land. There's coming a time where Pharaoh is not going to permit them to leave. He is going to force them to leave. He's not going to submit to God and say, you can go away from me and have your freedom. He's going to say, get out of here. I just can't have you around anymore. This has gotten too tough.
Yeah.
So we're expelling you. This is important because there are some of the children of Israel that really love living in Egypt. Moses has already kind of set this up. The first chapter, things are bad, but they don't cry out to God. They really don't cry out to God until much later, like Moses has left.
Yep.
And so there's 80 years that pass, and it gets so bad that they cry out to God. Now that Moses is there, and he's told them that he's going to deliver them, there are still some of the people that just want to stay in Egypt, and that's going to play out in in Exodus, when they want to go back. And so what has to happen is when we are so connected to something that we shouldn't be connected to, God has to kick us out somehow. And so the only way some of these Israelites would have left Egypt was if Pharaoh forced them to leave. That is a sad commentary.
Yeah.
But here's what we know. God made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he is so faithful to fulfill the covenant that even when people do not want to do what they need to do, he's going to force them to do what they need to do because he's going to keep his promise. Because he is sovereign, he's going to make it happen.
Yep.
So the point there is just be a part of what God wants done, and don't get so attached to the things in this world and where you actually live.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think?
It's good. I don't know if I have much else to add to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Not much to add. All right, verse 2. God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am the Lord. So we know that is his name again. It refers back to the burning bush. I am the Lord.
Yep.
I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty. So I am the Lord is the word Yahweh. God Almighty is actually El Shaddai.
El Shaddai.
El meaning God. Shaddai meaning all sufficient one, or all powerful one, all sufficient one.
Yeah.
is what that means. But by my name, the Lord Yahweh, I did not make myself known to them. Now it's at this point that you're studying and you go back and you look at the Hebrew and you're like, did he really not use Yahweh in Genesis? And the answer to that question is no. When he met with them, he did not use Yahweh. He didn't. He used El Shaddai, which I think is extremely interesting.
Yeah.
So El Shaddai, El is God. Shaddai is used like 31 times in Job and 17 times other places is all it's used. So the Lord, I did not make myself known to them. Verse 4, I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as sojourners. So here is a continuation of the first verse that says, look, Moses, I made a promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am going to give them land. I am going to give them a home. In fact, one step further is I am going to make them citizens of that land.
Yeah.
So they go from being aliens, which Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all of them were aliens.
Yeah.
They're aliens in the Egyptian land.
In Egypt.
And I'm going to take you from being an alien to being a citizen, which is precisely what happens to us. We are aliens, and God makes us into citizens.
Right, yeah.
And it's just it's a beautiful picture. It's a beautiful picture, just a beautiful picture. All right. Verse 5, moreover, I have heard the groaning of the people of Israel who the Egyptians hold as slaves, and have remembered my covenant. So I've remembered my covenant I've made. I've remembered that I made it with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I'm going to fulfill that. You are going to get property. You are going to get a home. I am going to fulfill that.
Yep.
Verse 6, say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. So there's several things going on here. First of all, this is an answer to chapter 5, verse 21, when the foreman says, Lord, look on you and judge. So God hears them and does make a judgment in Moses' favor that he's actually doing what he was called to do.
Yeah.
So the judgment kind of went against them.
Right. Yeah.
Is what happened at this point. And so I say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. I am going to judge them. Just hold on. The word yoke here is forced labor. Let me back up. The word yoke here is also the same word that's used for forced labor in chapter 1, verse 11. Is translated hard labor in chapter 2, verse 11. Is translated work in chapter 5, verse 4. And is translated bondage in chapter 6, verse 9. Here, it's translated that. Well, a little bit later. We haven't got to verse 9 yet. So that's the same word. Bringing out. I will deliver you. I'll bring you out from slavery. It means release from Egypt. That particular word is actually when you release a burdened animal from its burden, like an ox. It gets too heavy, and you release it, and now it's free to roam on its own. Yeah. It doesn't have to go. That's the type of word.
It's a sense of relief.
Yeah,
almost
it's a sense of relief. Yeah, exactly. Free is the same word as rescue in chapter 2, verse 9. So he's going to free them from slavery, deliver them, free them. Redeemed is rescue with the idea of relationship. In fact, that word is also part of kinsman redeemer, where a family member redeems someone from slavery, a kinsman from slavery, that has sold themselves into slavery to a foreign nation. So the kinsman redeemer comes and buys them back into their nation.
Yeah.
Is what happens. So God is saying, you've been in Egypt, you've been under Pharaoh, I am taking you out of that and making you mine again.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on there. Verse 7 says, I will take you to be my people. So that is the taking from them. That's the kinsman redeemer concept. I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. A couple of things about that particular verse. When they are freed from slavery, they are not left to determine their own destiny. They are freed from slavery to follow God.
Yeah.
They are freed from slavery to follow the destiny that he has for them. That's the same way it is for salvation.
Yeah.
We are free from the bondage of sin and the slavery and the beatings. It's not literal beatings, but figuratively, you're beating, you're drugged down, you're not going anywhere profitable. God saves you from that. He takes you from that, and he makes you his child, but you're just not free to do whatever you want to.
Right.
You are free to follow God's will for your life. And you have the power to do it.
Yeah.
Which is another picture of salvation
Yeah.
there in the passage. The you will know in verse 7, I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. That particular word know there, currently, they understand the theory that God is going to give them a land. This knowledge is that God has now done it, and they know it because he has done it, and they're living it.
Yeah.
So they go from a theory or a belief to a reality.
Yeah.
That's the same thing that's going to happen for us one day. One day, we're going to die, and we're going to go from the theory of salvation
Yeah.
to the reality
Yeah.
of salvation. Or I'll put it to you this way. We're going from the theory or the belief in heaven to actually knowing heaven.
You have the faith and things hoped for sort of thing that Paul talks about.
Yeah, but now it's not things hoped for. You've got them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you've got them. You know them that way. So they're hoping for freedom. They're hoping for a land, but they are going to have it.
Right, yeah.
So there's a parallel there between our spiritual walk and their physical walk. He continues here in verse 8, I'll bring you into the land, I swear to you, and blah, 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 all the way down to the end of it. And he says, I am the Lord. That is the word Yahweh again. So that's God's answer to Moses crying out to him to saying, this is not going the way that it should go. And God says, well, you're going to see it pretty soon.
Yeah.
And here's the promises that I made. Here's how I'm going to do it. And just hold on. We're heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it, but we're heading in the right direction.
Yeah. It's it almost reminds me of like when I was a kid, whenever I wanted something from my parents and it didn't seem to be happening, and I would bug them about it, and I'd bug them about it, and I'd bug them about it. And they would bring stuff up to show me that they remembered, that they hadn't forgotten about what I asked for. And it's kind of God's doing this thing where it's like, Moses, you're complaining or you're crying out, you're doing this stuff. I still remember. I haven't forgotten any of this. I'm going to give you specific examples with Canaan and the land in which they wandered around in, in which they weren't really citizens of. I'm going to give you examples where I talked to Abraham and Isaac and to Jacob. He's like, I remember everything. And it's a cool little reminder situation that God does for Moses.
Yeah, it is. I think we're going to get into this in the next little verse, but I think it's also interesting that patience is what faith requires.
Yeah.
And it didn't go well, and they reacted to that, which shows that they were very impatient.
Yeah.
They thought it was going to happen immediately.
Yeah.
Instead of just trusting
Yeah.
that this might take some time, they got very impatient.
In which you see it later on in the book of Exodus, how impatient the people are.
I get impatient in Chick-fil-A's drive-thru when I'm going through the mobile order line, and I think, this should be out by now. Why are these people in the other line passing me? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, have they forgotten me? I run out of faith in the Chick-fil-A employees at that point. Like, are they looking at the mobile screen? I mean, what are they doing? So on a much more devastating level, we do that to God sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
We prayed, we went through the mobile order. We're just sitting here. Why don't you do something?
God, have you forgotten about my order?
All these other people he's answering prayers for. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. God haven't you forgotten about my order? Yeah. So Moses goes back, and we'll go through verse 9 kind of slowly. Moses spoke thus to the people of Israel. I believe that Moses went back expecting the same type of reaction that he had in chapter 5, which was very positive. They all really were excited that he was there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's chapter 4. Yeah, it's chapter 4. Yeah, it's chapter 4. So, yeah, they were very excited. So he's expecting, he comes back with this message, and they're going to react kind of the same way. But they don't. And Moses spoke thus to the people of Israel. He said all that, but they did not listen to Moses. And here's why. It was because of their broken spirit and harsh slavery. They just couldn't cross over to faith because of how bad it was for them. Is what they're saying. A couple of things about verse 9. First of all, Moses has no objections to God, which is not normal. Because he had a bunch of objections up until this point. No objections. He accepted God's message and call. He went to the people. No objections at all. And I think in his mind, he thought, well, this is going to turn around. This is what they need to hear. Uplifted hand here in this passage. I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to you for possession. I am the Lord. God is swearing, like he went on the Bible. He's going to have it done. So he tells them this, and he thinks that is just going to be enough, and they just couldn't believe. And discouragement here, when it says Moses spoke to the people of Israel, and they did not listen to Moses because of their broken spirit. That particular word broken means discouragement. It's actually shortness, cut-offness of spirit or breath.
No.
We just can't believe this. We just have enough energy to make it through the day. We do not have enough energy to have faith in what you're saying.
Yeah.
We do not have enough energy to be excited about what you're saying. We were, but we just can't do it.
Yeah.
Spirit is their inner disposition and mood. So their mood is down. The mood is discouraged. And they were discouraged because of impatience. The application here is you and I need to be very careful when we're impatient with God.
Yeah.
We just need to trust him. And if you tap into impatience and you want things now, that leads you to a bad attitude and a lack of faith. It leads you to make decisions about your future and how you react that leads you into sin. That impatience.
Yeah.
Patience really never leads you into sin. It never does.
And it's incredible that what Moses is saying to them should bring encouragement.
Right.
It's exactly what they needed to hear.
Yeah.
But yet, because of their impatience, they just don't care.
Yeah, they don't. Well, they because of their impatience, they have equated that to not trusting God anymore.
Yeah. They've kind of tossed everything to the side.
Yeah, I trusted him if he would do it quickly.
Yeah.
But because he's waiting, I'm not going to trust him anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm brokenhearted, and now I'm just discouraged. We're under this harsh slavery. I wrote down, trust had been betrayed not because God wasn't faithful, but because their impatience was guiding their faith.
Yeah.
Never let impatience guide your faith.
Yeah.
Never do that. I think it's interesting that the Israelites are not addressed anymore from this point on until just before the Exodus.
Wow.
So they are kind of left behind.
Yeah.
We don't hear from them anymore. Yeah. So that's the reaction of the Israelites. And now we're to what part of the outline? Yeah, Moses is now doubting his ability because this did not go well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know, you kind of relate to Moses.
Yeah.
This didn't go well, and I'm sure it was me. What did I do wrong? I think God has chosen the wrong person.
Well, I mean, you go into something with expectations, and it doesn't meet those expectations. You're like, what did I do?
Yeah. Or you think, well, I'm able to do this, so you go in and
Yeah.
you're not able to do it.
Right.
Yeah. So verse 10 says, so the Lord said to Moses, go in and tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt. You're discouraged right now, but I want you to go in and tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the people of Israel go out of his land. So that's a renewed call
Yeah.
for Moses after this. And I want you to notice that that God preemptively spoke to Moses before Moses got to him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and say this to tell him what he needs to do.
Yeah.
I know he's discouraged. I'm not going to baby him. I'm just going to say, go do your job.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to say. So verse 12, but Moses said to the Lord, behold, the people of Israel have not listened to me. I hear what you're saying, Lord, but they're not listening to me. If they are not going to listen to me, how in the world do you expect Moses to listen to me?
Yeah. These are your people, God. If they're not listening to me, how do you expect someone who's not even your
These are the people on my team.
Yeah.
They're not listening to me.
Yeah.
The enemy is not going to listen to me.
Right.
How then shall Pharaoh listen to me, for I am of uncircumcised lips? Now, uncircumcised lips means faltering lips. It means lips that are not in a condition for God to use.
Yeah.
See, anything uncircumcised in the Bible is a picture of something that can't be used.
Yeah.
Uncircumcised lips, uncircumcised hearts.
Yep.
Uncircumcised just is a picture
Yeah.
of something that God can't use.
Right.
It is the circumcised heart, the heart that gives up something, the lips that give up something, a piece of themselves, if you will, that God is able to use. So we have to give up a piece of ourselves to make ourselves useful for God's work. So Moses is saying, I'm like uncircumcised lips. They falter. They're not ready. This is just not working. I think you got the wrong person.
Yeah.
I'm not able to do this. But then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. Mm-hmm. So Aaron must have been there. Yeah. And gave them a charge about the people of Israel and about Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt. So God doesn't even address Moses and his touting his inadequacy.
Yeah.
What God is saying, you're not bringing them out anyway. Mm-hmm. I am. And you are my vessels, and I'm going to use you, so just get with the program.
Yeah.
So God is trying to gracefully get Moses to realize, yes, you are inadequate, but I am not.
Right. Yeah.
And I have chosen you. Mm-hmm. And that is something that we all have to learn.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think about all that?
I think and you kind of hinted at this and brought it up. He says, I am of uncircumcised lips right after he fails in speaking.
Right.
Which is something that he was insecure about going into this.
Yeah.
So it only magnified Moses' fears in himself.
Mm-hmm. Listen, I kind of get this.
Yeah.
You prepare a message, you're all excited about it, and then you're preaching it, and the people are not reacting the way that you reacted to the message before you got up there. They're not as into it as you were into it in preparing it. And it just kind of falls flat. Though you have done all this prep and you're so excited about it, and there's no energy in the room. Because sometimes there's just no energy in the room. For instance, when we spring forward, there is not energy in the room. People are dead dog tired in the audience. I mean, that's just the way it is. And you go into it and you preach and you have all this excitement and you're ready for it, and you're like, people are just looking at you. You know, and you...
glazed eyes.
You just feel like you failed in that moment.
Yeah.
Now, I would say I have felt like I needed to figure out how to connect better, and I couldn't connect because I was so excited. That's what happened. But Moses goes into this. Let me finish that illustration. I leave the stage thinking, that was a disaster.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be good, but it was nothing like I thought it was.
Yeah.
And then you're hard on yourself after that. Here's Moses, a great speech. In fact, it's a speech he didn't even prepare. Right. God gave him the words to say. Yeah. He's like, God gave me these words.
Yeah.
They're going to love this. Go in, talk to them. They are dead dog tired, looking at him like, no.
Yeah, right.
We don't have the energy for this.
Right, yeah.
And we're just not going to fall. So, of course, he's saying, I think you got the wrong person. I can't even speak to these people and move their hearts.
And I think if you haven't spoken to, I guess that's the right grammar for that. If you haven't spoke to people in front, like on a stage like that, and you expect them to react a certain way, and then they just don't.
Yeah.
If you haven't done that before, I don't know if you, because we get a certain meaning from this. We understand this a little better because, we do this. Mm-hmm. But that, I don't know if the average person, they do this all the time and they go into this with expectations and they see the audience and it's just not the same.
Right.
But you just leave the stage, like you said, beating yourself up. What did I do wrong? There's some of the ones where you're like, am I cut out for this?
Right.
And those are the ones that you
maybe
really
it's time for me to retire.
Yeah, those are the ones you really got to spend some time in prayer with.
Yeah. So the Lord just says, just keep doing it. Yeah. You're not doing it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm using you. You do have talents and abilities. He's not saying that, but I am adequate when you're not adequate.
Yeah.
I'm adequate when you don't feel like you're adequate. I've already made you adequate. It's what God's saying.
Yeah.
But when you feel inadequate, don't go on those feelings.
Yeah.
Hold on to your calling. Well, the next part of it is just a genealogy. And I don't mean just a genealogy. We're just not going to get into it. So verses 14 through, what is it?
25. Is
that 25 is a genealogy. And then next week, we're actually going to pick up verses 28 and following, because that actually ties into chapter 7.
Okay.
So any closing comments on any of that?
No. It's a good reminder that the Lord remembers.
It's a good reminder that the Lord remembers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems to be the main message of this whole thing. I remember the covenants. I remember the promises.
Yeah.
Continue to have faith in the things hoped for. Yeah. One day they'll be delivered.
One day they'll be delivered, even though it seems like it's getting bad. Or worser.
Getting worser out there.
And with that incredibly bad grammar, grace and peace and